Welcome back to another series in our TOEFL IBT preparation course. Okay, and in our session today, we'll be practicing the strategies for the speaking section. Okay, you ready? Let's start. Now, before we go on and take a look at the questions and try to implement the strategies we've learned, let's have a quick review of the structure and format in the speaking section. Okay, so as we have discussed in our previous lessons, the speaking section of the TOEFL IBT consists of 4 questions, right? The independent question and the 3 integrated questions. And the first question is called the paired choice, which will ask you to make and defend a personal choice between 2 ideas. Don't forget about the timing. You'll have 15 seconds to prepare your answer for this question and 45 seconds to respond. In the integrated tasks, they are in 3 different types. So we have the fit and explain, where you will read a passage, a short one, and then you will listen to a conversation in which one of the speakers will comment on the passage, and then you will have to summarize the speaker's opinion. You'll have 30 seconds to prepare and 60 seconds to respond. In the third question, we have the general specific question. This one also requires you to read a passage, but this time it's going to be about an academic subject, similar to the lecture. It will also be the same academic topic that is connected to the passage. And then for the speaking response, you will have to combine and share the important information from both sources. You'll have 30 seconds to prepare and 60 seconds to respond. And the last question, which is the summary question, you will only listen to a lecture before speaking about it. Okay, so this one will require you to summarize the key information from the lecture. The preparation time is 20 seconds and the response time is 60. Now, in total, you'll span around 17 minutes for this section, so prepare yourself. Okay, so now time to see some example questions and some sample answers. Here we go. Okay, so again, you will see some questions taken from an actual TOEFL test, and then we will discuss the sample responses with some explanation. Before you see the first question in the speaking section, you will be given directions. So the directions will look like this. You need to know this and study it and read it before the test so that when you are at the test, you don't need to waste your time going over the directions again. Okay, let's start with the first question. The independent task, aka paired choice question. You will now be asked to give your opinion about a familiar topic. Give yourself 15 seconds to prepare your response, then record yourself speaking for 45 seconds. All right, now in the actual test, after the narrator speaks, and it usually says the same instruction or question given, the timer for the preparation will start automatically. So you have to be ready to start preparing yourself for your response. And if when the 15 seconds is up, the 45 response time will automatically start as well. Now, to answer this question, before I give you some time to do that, so that you can practice, I want you to remember the strategies. Remember these key strategies, especially to deal with this first question. So the first one is you should use a direct approach to begin your talk. Don't spend too much time in introducing the topic. Okay. And then improve your task one response with a concession. If you forgot what concession means, then go ahead and check our previous lesson. And then the next strategy, always prepare reasons and examples. So sometimes before the time runs out, you will run out of ideas or things to talk about. Now, that is a waste of point, of course, because you should use all of the time given to meet the expected number of words for you to say or to speak about. So if you prepare reasons and examples, it will usually help you fulfill that time. And the next strategy in the end is to think like a reader. So remember, think about what the rater would expect to see to give you the highest score. Okay, now are you ready to apply them? Okay, so here we go.
Many universities now offer academic courses over the internet. However, some people still prefer learning in traditional classrooms. Which do you think is better? Explain why.
15 seconds, prepare your response. "45 seconds, speak your response. Time's up. So, what do you think about your response? Do you think it will check all of the points to get the highest score? Let's see.
Many universities
Now, so remember that the strategies will help you to get the highest score. So the first one, use a direct approach to begin your talk. So again, don't waste your time talking about or introducing the topic in a way that doesn't answer the question. So you see, the questions are already given there. Which do you think is better, and explain why? So if you start your response without directly addressing this question, you are wasting your time. Because what the raters would like to see mainly is your response to these key questions. And then the next strategy, improve your task one response with a concession. So remember, by using concession in the beginning of your response, you are giving good impression to the raters, showing an example of a high level response. And then always prepare reasons and examples. So reasons and examples will make sure that you can use all of the time, the 45 seconds, to provide a spoken response that is long enough for the raters to assess. And then think like a rater. So don't forget about the checklist. Make sure that your response are in line with these criteria. Now, let's listen to an example of a good response to give you more ideas of what you need to prepare.
Although learning in a traditional face-to-face classroom has its own advantages, such as the direct contact with the teacher and classmates, I personally prefer the online course better. I think it's better for two reasons.
Okay, so if you notice the beginning of the response, the speaker uses a concession where he is saying, although learning in traditional classroom is has its advantages, such as the direct contact with the teacher. So that's a concession, and that will make your response sound more of a high level. And then after he gives the concession, he continues with responding to the question, which do you think is better? So he says, I prefer learning in online courses, right? So that's a direct approach.
Although learning in traditional face-to-face classroom has its own advantages, such as the direct contact with the teacher and classmates, I personally prefer the online course better. I think it's better for two reasons. Wherever they are, the first one is it's much better. I think it's better for two reasons.
Okay, so you hear that? The speaker says, I think it's better for two reasons. So that's an outlining. Now, by giving an outline, you help yourself to stay in track or on track with your response. And you can have better, a good outline if you make also a good note, where on your note, you will write your outline that will guide you in your speaking.
The first one is it's more accessible. Students can join from wherever they are, and it's not limited only to those who live near the school or campus where the class is held. The second reason is it's potentially more efficient and convenient. If you learn English online with a teacher from the US, for example, you can simply join their class virtually, saving you the time, money, and effort of traveling to their country.
Okay, so you see, every time he gives his reason, he also makes sure that he backs it up or supports it with an example. So, like the example he just gave, learning online with a teacher in other parts of the country or other parts of the world, right? Making it very more efficient for the students.
To join their class. I think more courses in the future will be online rather than offline because of these reasons.
Okay. And also he concludes or he completes his response with a very good logical extension. So, so that uh, will check all of the criteria needed for the highest score for this question. So that's an example. Now you can listen to that again on your own time and make sure that you understand why this response is considered an excellent response. Okay, all right, let's continue to the next task, which is the integrated task fit and explain. So take a look at the question here. You will now read a short passage and listen to a conversation on the same topic. You will then be asked a question about them. After you hear the question, give yourself 30 seconds to prepare your response, then record yourself speaking for 60 seconds. Okay, now, after the narrator speaks in the real test, the timer will start automatically. Okay, so when the timer starts, make sure that you also start your reading. So, and also don't forget to apply the strategies, especially for this part. The strategies will be number one is to take notes with shortcuts. So don't forget, if there are important pieces of information from the passage, make sure you take notes and draw maps to organize your notes. So if it helps you, then you can also draw maps. And don't forget, you won't be able to see this after the time runs out. So make sure you note down all of the essential parts of information from the passage to help you prepare your response later. So now let's do it.
The computer department is considering making a scheduling change. You will have 45 seconds to read an article in the campus newspaper about the change. Begin reading now. The computer department. Now listen to two students discussing the article.
I just don't think this will work.
Why not?
Because it's not going to solve the problem. Students are busy at night. I mean, we have jobs, families, clubs, social events. Most of us already have something to do every single night of the week.
I see your point. I sure couldn't fit anything into my schedule during the week. I've got swimming practice most nights.
Right. And as far as expense goes, I think they're going about it the wrong way. I mean, it costs money to hire more teachers and keep the academic building open later, which is a lot more expensive than just simply buying more computers.
More computers?
That's right. Computer prices have come way down the past few years, so the department won't have to spend as much now as they did in the past. Besides, the computer department classrooms, the rooms themselves, they're actually very big. There's plenty of space to add more computers.
The man expresses his opinion about the proposal described in the article. Briefly summarize the proposal. Then state his opinion about the proposal and explain the reasons he gives for holding that opinion. Now listen.
All right, so now you will have your preparation time for 30 seconds before you respond for 60 seconds. Don't forget to apply the strategies. Use a direct approach. Follow the outline in the directions for your response. Practice the few key phrases to help you when you are stuck. And don't waste your time with irrelevant responses. And the last one, as usual, think like a reader. Ready? Now begin your preparation in 30 seconds, starting from now. Begin your response for 60 seconds, starting from now. And time's up. So What do you think about your response? Do you think it will check all of the criteria to get the excellent score? Let's see an example that does. Okay. So remember that these strategies will be useful for you for this type of question. And the first one is to use a direct approach. Okay, so do not waste your time with a long, winding, or unnecessary, lengthy introduction to the topic, because your main goal is to answer the questions in the directions. All right, and then follow the directions for an outline. So the directions already gives you the clue of a good outline, and if you follow the outline in the directions, you'll have an outline that looks like this. So you will start with a summary of the announcement, the passage, and then the opinion of the student, in this case, the man, and then his reasons for holding that opinion. Okay. And then prepare a few key phrases such as this that will help you get going, especially when you are stuck. Don't waste your time with irrelevant responses such as your personal opinion. Remember, the questions asks you to report or state the student's opinion and not yours. So even though your personal opinion is really good and uses a very good grammar or vocabulary, it will be pretty much useless because that is not relevant to the question. And then think like a rater. Okay, don't forget those criteria to get the highest score. Now, let's listen to an example of an excellent response that applies all of these strategies.
The proposal is about the computer department's decision to add evening classes.
So this beginning, the speaker or this student directly addresses the question by giving the announcement summary. All right, so remember, summarize the announcement by stating the key point from the announcement, which is the passage.
This is because the computer classes during the day is too crowded and there aren't enough computers for all of the students.
And if possible, include reasons or examples of what is that the key idea from the announcement to give more details.
The male student disagrees with the idea, thinking that it won't solve the problem.
And then give the short introduction of the man's opinion. In this case, the speaker, the student, introduces the man's opinion with the reason why he agrees or disagrees with the announcement.
He thinks so for two reasons. The
So,
proposal is about the computer.
so there, the student gives an outline of two reasons. Again, this will be helpful to keep you on track when you are responding to the questions.
Students. The male student disagrees with the idea, thinking that it won't solve the problem. He thinks so for two reasons. The first one is, in his opinion, students are less likely to attend the evening classes because they may have other things to do, such as spending time with their family or working.
Okay, so you see, it's very complete. The student introduces the first reason along with the examples. So again, reasons and examples will help you to clarify and provide a more complete response to the topic.
Secondly, he thinks it is not.
Okay, did you notice how he connects the first idea to the next? He uses the linking or the connecting word such as secondly. This is useful to increase or improve your score in terms of cohesion or topic development, which is one of the criteria in the speaking grading.
Not the most efficient solution compared to buying new computers. because it will be more expensive to open classes at night as they'll have to pay the professors and the extra cost for.
Okay, so that's the reason for the man's reason. So the student gave his reason why he didn't agree with the announcement. And then the student also explains the reason why he has that reason. So it's very detailed. And that's why this response is an example of an excellent response.
opening the campus building. And he also added that the classroom is big enough to accommodate the additional computers.
Okay. And he even further provides a detail of uh, more reason or information for the last point, which is very good. So listen to that sample answer again in your own time and try to understand fully why the response checks all of the criteria for an excellent response, and try to aim to have an answer like that as well. Okay, so that's for the second question. Now, the third question is also an integrated task, which is the general specific question. So here, you will read a short passage and listen to a lecture on the same topic as the passage, and then you will be asked a question about them. After you hear the question, you will be given 30 seconds and then 60 seconds to speak. Okay, now, don't forget the strategies. So take notes effectively with shortcuts. You will not be able to see the passage again or the listening after they are given. And then you can also use maps, drawing maps on your notes to help you organize the information on your notes to help you respond with all the necessary details later. Are you ready to try? Let's start.
Now read a passage from a psychology textbook. You have 45 seconds to read the passage. Begin reading now. Now listen to part of a lecture on this topic in a psychology course.
Last month, my favorite uncle paid me a surprise visit. I hadn't seen him in many years. The doorbell rang, I opened the door, and there was Uncle Pete. Now, I'm sure when I saw him, I said something like, "Uncle Pete, what a surprise! How nice to see you." Anyway, my wife was standing next to me, and according to her, I wasn't really aware of this, my eyes got really wide and I broke into a huge big smile. She said I was actually jumping up and down like a little boy. Well, anyway, later that evening, Uncle Pete told me how very, very good he felt when he saw how happy I was to see him. But compare that with this. My daughter, she's 6. We were building a birdhouse together last week, and I was showing her how to use a hammer and nail. And of course, stupid me, I wasn't being very careful, and I smashed my thumb with the hammer. Boy, did it hurt. I almost felt like screaming, but I didn't want to upset my daughter, so I said, "Don't worry, honey, it's nothing." Meanwhile, I was shaking my hand as if that would stop my thumb from hurting, and my face was contorted in pain. My voice was trembling, too. So even though I told my daughter I was okay, I'm sure she didn't believe me, because she kept asking me if I was okay.
Explain how the examples from the professor's lecture illustrate the relationship between verbal and nonverbal communication. Now listen to
All right, so after you read the passage, and listen to the lecture, you will be given the preparation time and response time. So explain how the examples from the professor's lecture illustrate the relationship between verbal and nonverbal communication. Now, the strategies are similar to the task 2. So use a direct approach, follow the directions for an outline. And if you can see here, the first thing you need to do is to explain it, and then use the examples given in the lecture especially, and a few key phrases, the one that you prepare will be helpful. Do not waste your time with irrelevant responses, and consider the criteria that the raters will check. You ready to respond? Okay, now I will give you the 30 seconds preparation time, and then you will have the 60 seconds to respond. And prepare your response starting from now. Begin speaking your response now. Stop speaking now. Okay, so what do you think about your response? Have you tried all of the strategies? Let's see. All right, so again, apply the strategies to get the highest score. So start with the direct approach, follow the directions for an outline, and if you follow the directions as seen in the screen over there, you'll have an outline that will look like this. So starting with the summary of the reading concept or the theory or ideas in the reading, and then the transition to the lecture examples, along with the details of the examples. And if there is a remaining time in the end, you can conclude it with a summary or a logical conclusion. All right, and then there are a few key phrases that can help you for this task, such as the lecturer refutes or supports or clarifies or explains the information in the reading, or according to the reading. This is especially useful for the beginning when you cover the summary of the reading concept. Okay, and you can also use this pattern or key phrase to introduce a definition. Don't waste your time with irrelevant responses, such as, I think the topic is very interesting. I also really like the lecture stuff. These kinds of responses are meaningless and won't really impact or affect your score. As a matter of fact, on the contrary, this could decrease your score because this may be considered as a memorized answer or response, and ETS or the TOEFL IBT really discourages the memorized response. And the raters have been trained to identify those kinds of responses. So do not use them. Okay, and then think like the rater again. So try to remember the criteria that they will be looking for in your response. Now, let's listen to an example of an excellent response that applies all of the strategies.
The reading explains the concept of verbal and nonverbal communication. The reading explains the concept of verbal and nonverbal communication.
So that's the beginning. Okay, so that's like a summary of the reading concept.
According to the reading, verbal communication is how we express our feelings with words, and nonverbal communication is more about our gestures or body language.
Okay, so that's a very good and brief summary of the concept in the reading. And if you notice, the student uses the key phrase to help him introduce the topic.
According to the reading, the information we communicate through these modes can agree or disagree with one another, and sometimes the nonverbal one can be more accurate. The professor in the lecture clarifies this further.
Okay, so there's the transition. The professor in the lecture clarifies this further. So that's the transition that the student uses.
By giving two examples from his own experience. First, he tells a story about when he met his uncle. And
okay, so you notice again, he uses the word first. So that's connecting word, and that's an indicator of topic development, a good topic development.
And he was very happy. He said, "I was very happy to meet you." And his body language confirmed that. He had a big smile and wide eyes.
Okay, so that's the details that the student provides. It's very complete. The idea and then the examples and elaboration. So make sure that you prepare all these little details to provide lengthy and enough response during the response time.
In the second example, he talks about when he hit his hand with a hammer accidentally while he was with his daughter. He doesn't want to upset his daughter, so he verbally says he's fine, but his daughter can see from his nonverbal language that he is in pain, and that is a more accurate representation of his feelings then.
Okay, so the last part where the student says it's a more accurate representation of the feeling is a sort of a conclusion or a logical extension of the idea. So that's an example of an excellent answer. And if you want to have a response like that, practice applying these strategies. All right. Okay, now let's go and see the last question. The fourth task, summary question. So remember, in this question, you will only listen to a lecture, and then you will be asked to summarize, usually to summarize the lecture, meaning that you have to state the main ideas along with the necessary supporting details that the lecture covers in the listening. Okay, and the strategies are the same during this part. You have to take note effectively by using shortcuts and also maps to help you later prepare your response. Are you ready? Okay, let's try it.
Listen to part of a talk in an art appreciation class.
In order for art to communicate,
Listen to part of a talk in an art appreciation class.
in order for art to communicate, to appeal to the emotions or the intellect, it has to combine various visual elements to express meaning or emotion. It's really the visual components of the work, things like color, texture, shape, lines, and how these elements work together that tell us something about the work. Artists combine and manipulate these visual elements to express a message or to create a mood. Think about how a painter might use color, for example. You all know from experience that different colors appeal in different ways to the senses and can convey different meanings. An artist chooses certain colors to evoke a particular mood and make powerful statements. The color red, for example, is a strong color and can conjure up strong emotions, such as extreme joy or excitement or even anger. Blue, on the other hand, is considered a cool color. Blue colors tend to have a calming effect on viewers. Another visual element important to art is texture. By texture, I mean the surface quality or feel of the work, its smoothness or roughness or softness. Now, of course, in some types of art, the texture is physical. It can actually be touched by the fingers. But in painting, for example, texture can be visual. The way an artist paints certain areas of a painting can create the illusion of texture, an object's smoothness or roughness or softness. A rough texture can evoke stronger emotions and strength, while a smooth texture is more calming and less emotional. As I said earlier, artists often combine elements to convey a message about the work. Take a painting that, say, uses a lot of strong colors like reds and oranges and uses brushstrokes that are broad, wide sweeping brushstrokes that suggest a rough texture. Well, these elements together can convey a wilder, more chaotic emotion in the viewer more than in, say, a painting with tiny, smooth brushstrokes and soft or pale colors. Artists use these visual effects and the senses they arouse to give meaning to their work.
Using points and examples from the lecture, explain the importance of visual elements in painting. Listen to
All right, so that was the lecture. Now, using points and examples from the lecture, explain the importance of visual elements in painting. So the strategy here is similar to the previous ones. You need to use your notes, the one that you made during the listening, and then try to create an outline following the directions. So here the directions already gives you the outline that you need to develop or expand or elaborate the examples from the lecture, and making sure that you explain why visual elements are important in painting. Okay, so now I will give you the 20 seconds preparation time before you speak for 60 seconds to respond to the question. Ready? Begin your preparation starting from now. Begin speaking your response now. And time's up. So, what do you think about your response? Do you think you'll get the excellent score? Let's see an example that does. Okay. So again, the strategies are similar, yet it's very important to help you maximize the score for your response. Use a direct approach, follow the outline, and you can see an example outline over there. So the first main idea will be the importance of visual elements, and then the other ideas will be the samples that the professor provides in the lecture. And then some key phrases will help you for this task, as you see the examples there. And again, irrelevant responses will not be something good for you to use your time. And then think like like a rater to make sure that you check all of the criteria for the excellent score. So let's listen to an example of an excellent score response following the strategies.
The lecturer discusses how visual effects are important to communicate feelings, emotions, and meanings in painting. She supports.
Okay, so that's the opening. That's the explanation of why visual elements is important. Okay, so the response directly approach the questions by explaining that, which is very good.
This idea by giving examples of the two key visual elements, namely colors and textures.
Okay, and then he follows with the outline of the two key examples of the visual elements.
The lecturer states that a painter's choice of colors in their artwork can evoke different emotions from the viewers. Red, for example, can evoke anger, and blue, in contrast, tends to evoke calmer feelings. The same principle applies with the second visual element, which is textures.
Okay, so you see, the student uses a very high level connecting, what is that, feature there. So instead of using connecting words, he uses the structure that still relates the next idea with the idea in the previous sentence. So that's another way of creating or showing good organization and topic development in your response.
The lecturer points out that textures can be physical, how the surface feels when you touch it, or visual, how it looks. Similar to color, the lecturer discusses how when you touch it, or visual, how it looks. Similar to color, different structure can.
Okay, so if you pay attention again, he uses the same technique to introduce the next idea or point using the phrase similar to color. So similar to color, he already explains about color. Now he's moving on to texture. So he simply uses the phrase similar to color. You can also use this kind of approach, which is an evidence of good organization and cohesion and coherence in your response.
Or visual, how it looks. Similar to color, different structure can invite different feelings and emotions from the viewers. As a smooth texture, for example, can feel more calming than a rough one. Therefore, these elements are important for artists to convey meanings through their paintings and for their viewers to understand them.
Okay, so he provides examples, and then at the end, he has the time to provide some kind of a conclusion of the importance of visual elements. Okay, so that's an example of an excellent response. Now, again, study these excellent sample answers and try to use the same strategies that the answer follows, and make sure that you check all of the criteria to get the excellent score. And
The lecturer discusses.
that would be the end of our series for this, which is sample speaking test and explanation. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in another series.